If you're coming to Canada as a temporary resident, especially through IEC, health insurance can feel very confusing very quickly. You'll hear about IEC insurance, and then there's provincial healthcare, employer benefits, private policies. These are not the same thing, and they serve very different purposes. So in this video, I'm going to explain the differences and when you might need each one. The first thing I'll go through is IEC eligible insurance. So if you're coming to Canada through International Experience Canada, also commonly referred to as a working holiday, but there are the young professionals or international co-op programs as well, you must have IEC-compliant insurance. This insurance is required to meet IRCC's definition of eligible coverage. That generally means that it must include medical care, hospitalization, and repatriation, which means returning you to your country in the event of severe illness, injury, or death. And the coverage must be for the entire duration of your work permit. Now, here's something that's really important to understand. IEC insurance policies are often quite lean. They focus heavily on emergencies, and their purpose is not to provide you with comprehensive everyday healthcare coverage that works to cover you for all situations in Canada. The purpose of an IEC insurance policy is essentially to protect Canada. It's to reduce the risk that an IEC participant becomes a major financial burden on Canada's healthcare system in the event of a catastrophic accident or a medical emergency. That's why repatriation is mandatory. If something really serious happens, the expectation is that you could be returned to your home country for long-term care. So when you're thinking about IEC insurance, think of it as mandatory emergency-focused protection that allows you to activate your work permit and legally participate in the IEC program. This is not the same as public healthcare coverage, and expecting it to function in the same way will or can lead to disappointment. On that note, the second thing I would like to cover is provincial or the public healthcare system. You've probably heard that healthcare in Canada is free. This is what that refers to. It's provincial healthcare because each province and territory in Canada has a publicly funded system that operates separately to the others. Eligibility varies across the country. I can't say what eligibility for Canada's public healthcare looks like. It's going to change. Some temporary workers qualify, some won't. Some IEC participants qualify, some international students qualify, some do not. It depends on your immigration status, the province or territory you choose, the type and length of your permit, whether you're moving from one province to another. In provinces where you are eligible, public healthcare can cover medically necessary hospital visits, doctor visits, and certain diagnostic services. But there are gaps. It does not typically cover things like dental care, prescription medications outside of the hospital setting, medical services like physiotherapy, and vision care. Each province has slightly different rules and slightly different costs for sort of these gaps in the medical system. So if you're unsure, you'll need to check the specific eligibility and the lists of what's included where you're living. We do have detailed articles that break down eligibility for provincial healthcare by province if you need more guidance, so I recommend checking those out. The key things at this point to understand are IEC insurance is mandatory at entry, provincial healthcare is separate, eligibility is not automatic, and getting provincial healthcare does not mean that you no longer need your IEC policy and can cancel it. Repeat, it does not mean that. They are two separate things. They do not perform the same function, and cancelling your IEC policy can result in your work permit becoming invalid or being retracted. The third type of insurance I would like to go through at this point is employer health benefits. If you get a job in Canada, your employer may extend health benefits. This is private insurance provided through your workplace, and these policies are designed to fill those gaps in the public healthcare system that I talked about. Sometimes this can be tricky on temporary status, so you'll need to work with your employer's insurer just to ensure that you are going to be eligible and to work out what your coverage looks like. So these policies can typically cover things like dental care, usually up to an annual limit, and then there's prescription drugs might be included, physiotherapy, massage therapy, vision care, glasses, that kind of thing. These are often called extended health benefits because they extend beyond what public healthcare in Canada covers. And again, these do not replace IEC insurance requirements. They do not usually replace provincial healthcare. Instead, they sit on top of it to reduce your overall costs when it comes to medical care in Canada. And then there are private health insurance comprehensive plans. So these can operate similarly to the insurance provided through an employer, but there are also options for people who aren't going to be able to be covered by an employer, especially for people who come to Canada and there's a period of time where they don't have access to the public system. So this is relevant for some international students. It can be relevant for people on maintained status. There are a variety of reasons where this might be relevant to you. Alternatively, you may just want additional health coverage. Employer policies companies don't always offer the best coverage, so some people do opt to just have private health insurance. There are companies like one that we've partnered with, Cigna Healthcare, that offer comprehensive plans that suit newcomers to Canada. They may, depending on what you're looking for, cover gaps in the public system, cover emergency care if you're not yet eligible for provincial healthcare, cover hospital bills if you're between coverage periods, or if you've moved province and you're not eligible for the next provincial healthcare, that kind of thing. And they can provide more flexible global coverage. These policies are often more flexible and more customizable, but again, they are very different from the mandatory IEC insurance required at entry. So getting one of these policies does not mean that you can cancel your IEC insurance policy. So when it comes to insurance in Canada, what do you actually need? If you're coming through IEC, in case it hasn't been clear, you must have an IEC insurance policy for the full duration of your work permit. Then if you're coming as a temporary resident, whether that is through IEC or any other temporary authorization, you may become eligible for provincial healthcare, again, depending on where you choose to settle and your permit type and your employment status. If you get a job, you may receive employer benefits, and you may also choose private insurance to cover gaps or waiting periods. So these systems are layered, they're not interchangeable. And one huge mistake I see is that people assume that getting one insurance replaces the other. It does not. Understanding how these insurance policies, how the system works together is what protects you financially and keeps you compliant with your Canadian immigration rules. But hopefully this gives you a clear framework for understanding the different types of insurance that you'll encounter as a temporary resident in Canada. For province-specific breakdowns and more resources on navigating healthcare in Canada, please check out the relevant links in the description box below. And if you'd like to stay in the loop with updates on Canadian healthcare, immigration, and life in Canada, consider subscribing to our newsletter and subscribing to our channel.